Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way on this episode of Off 90. We meet a passionate artist from Mankato. We learn about a historic bank in Owatonna. We pop in on a farmer's market in Rochester. And we check up on just how the city of Rochester is doing. It's all just ahead. Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off 90. Dana Sikkila has created, developed, and sustained a hands-on creative community throughout areas of southern Minnesota, connecting youth, universities, and community members into the arts to work together. With her hands-on approach to arts administration, Dana has formed creative networks that branch over many fields. But somehow, she finds time to make her own art, too.
But the first thing we're going to do, okay, we're going to work on our canvas, but we're going to use our markers first. Perfect. One more time around. I'm someone who loves working with my hands. You know, I love building things, you know, printing things, just, I don't know, like using that part of my brain to be expressive. Make some big shapes. Do some big shapes like this. And to be able to show that, you may make some little ones and share that with other people, and for other people, you know, artists or non-artists, to be able to maybe learn from that or experience something new, I think is just amazing. Okay, so you're gonna draw your teeth. What shape are your teeth? Are they squares? Rectangle? I'm Dana Sikkila. I'm a visual artist as well as an arts administrator, educator, and advocate. I'm a visual artist, so I'm practicing my own work and creation, but I'm the executive director of the 410 Project, which is a community art space. But then I'm an educator. I teach at Mankato State University. I'm on the board of our Regional Arts Council as well as a board member for Minnesota Citizens for the Arts. So we're the organization that lobbies with the House and Senate to keep funding in this state for artists and arts organizations. As a visual artist, I would describe myself as someone who's working in a lot of different disciplines. I don't really like to pigeonhole myself into one medium. I started exploring ideas of installation and sculpture and paper and how those things can all work together into transforming a space versus the space to still stay originally what it is, and then artwork just goes on the walls. I think if the 410 wasn't in existence when I was younger, I don't think I'd still be living in this town, and I don't think I would be the artist that I am or the practicing artist. So the 410 Project is a community art space that's completely volunteer managed. Just through the years, we've really developed as not just an exhibition space, but a community space where we offer classes for youth and adults, and teaching artists that there's more to being an artist than just making your work. You need to know how to display your work and how to be able to write about your work and to speak about it, and to really give people an opportunity to expand their career and their idea of who they are as an artist by helping move them forward into being successful and sustaining off of what they really want to do. Well, I would say the majority of the work that I do is not paid work. You know, so I always have a lot of people that come up to me, or when I'm doing interviews, they're always like, well, why do you give so much of your time? Or again, like, how do you make money, or what, you know, and I kind of got past the point that it's not about me. You know, it's about a bigger picture. It's about these other people. And that's what I'm passionate about. It's how do we use our talents and our passion to help other people feel that same way? We're trying to really connect with people, and so it was like, okay, what are my two passions? And I had biking and art making. So how do I combine biking and art making together? And I was like, well, what if I just like get on my bike and ride around Minnesota and talk to artists and collect their work? And so whenever we meet with artists, we collect 2 to 3 works of art. Some people won't even put their artwork through the mail, but they're like, we'll put it on the back of a bike and it can ride 400 miles through rain and heat and all that stuff, and collect all the work. We bring it back here and we have an exhibit of all the work transported from the artists' studios or homes back here. So we have the work on display, but then we also have a documentary, again, that's about highlighting the trip, but also these artists and what they do. I consider myself a workaholic. I thrive off of working, which is a positive and negative. I always say I'm a person of opportunities, so I'm always looking for the next thing. Like as an artist, it's like, okay, what am I gonna do 6 months from now? What am I gonna do a year from now? It's like what I do now and how I place myself with applying for things or just looking for different opportunities or applying for grants. What I do now sets me up for what I do 6 months from now or a year from now. So if I'm not constantly doing that, I can't progress myself forward with what I want to do within my career. So it's really about constantly working, and again, eventually it will catch up to me, but right now it hasn't quite yet, I guess.
The National Farmers Bank of Owatonna is a bank building designed by Louis Sullivan. It was built in 1908 and was the first of Sullivan's jewel boxes, a series of designs Sullivan made for several banks that all had the same theme. Sullivan, who once was a prominent architect living in Chicago, had fallen on hard times. The commission in Owatonna breathed new life into his career.
It's considered the most famous small-town bank in the United States.
Well, I think the first time I came in here, like everyone else, you just stop in awe and you look up. Everywhere you look, there's something beautiful and unique to look at. And there's a lot of really rich detail. Every time I come in, I see something new that I haven't noticed before.
Carl Bennett was the son of the founder of the National Farmers Bank. Carl had grown up in Owatonna. He was born here, just lived about 3 blocks up the street. After he attended Pillsbury Academy, he went to Harvard. His study was in music. I've talked to his grandson, who's now since passed away, and he said that probably the saddest day of Carl's life was when he came back to Owatonna, because his father expected that he would come back and be part of the bank business. But as Carl was here, he tried to bring art and culture into the city. He was involved in the Beethoven Society here in town. He also was on the library board, helped to choose the architect for that building. And he was a city council member, just very involved in the community. And so when his father was no longer the head of the bank, Carl decided it was time to build a new bank building, and that's when he contacted Louis Sullivan.
Louis Sullivan was one of the premier architects in Chicago in the late 1800s, and he was very influential, especially in what would become the Prairie School of Architecture. Frank Lloyd Wright himself worked for Louis Sullivan. In the 1890s, you have a financial panic, so people aren't commissioning these large commercial buildings anymore. And then you also have changes in tastes, so his type of design was falling out of favor. And then he kind of got a reputation of being difficult to work with. So he was starting to have a decline in his career. So when Carl Bennett approached him and asked him to come and design a bank in this little town in Minnesota, he was happy to do it.
And in October of 1906, that was the first time that Louis came to Owatonna, and he sat here in Central Park and looked across to where the old bank building was located, which was a 3-story typical storefront almost. And as he sat here in Central Park, he had a kind of an idea of what he wanted to make, and so he actually sketched out the basic shape of the bank building that day. Carl felt so strongly that this was important to have a building that would be something for people to come and see. One of the things, it was the National Farmers Bank. So Louis Sullivan was also part of the Prairie School movement. You'll see the banks of windows, the earth tones, the browns, greens, blues. Sullivan loved to work with color. He said that this was going to be a symphony of color. The most significant feature on the bank building are the arched windows. And that can either be the sun rising or the sun setting on the prairie. In the bank itself, you'll see a lot of decoration that goes back to nature, leaves, the seed pod. That was an important thing that Sullivan talked about, how everything came out of the seed pod, and you'll notice small brown features in there that the leaves come out of. George Elmsley was a draftsman for Louis Sullivan and did a lot of the work for the decorative elements of the bank. Sullivan said that it was going to be like a jewel box. So you can look at it like a sunrise or sunset, but you could also look at it as a treasure box where people could put their things inside and be safe. The bank building is so different from the other buildings here in Owatonna. There are 2 banks that were built shortly before the National Farmers Bank was built. And one is directly across the street. That was the Security State Bank. And the bank itself was only located in a small section of that bank building. Another one that was built about the same time was the First National Bank. It is surrounded by other buildings so that it doesn't stand out by itself. A corner is the best place for a bank.
A lot of tourists come here. They visit Owatonna in order to see this because this really is one of the most important things that Louis Sullivan did. It's really a lasting part of his legacy. He ended up creating 8 jewel box banks. Unfortunately, as we get farther into the 1920s, farming prices drop, farmers can't make their payments. And the banks who made all those loans, by the late 1920s, Carl Bennett had to close the bank. He declared bankruptcy and he never recovered. And he talked later in life that he really regretted not pursuing that career in music that he always wanted.
At that point, Carl, for a short time, went to New York to try to become a stockbroker. It didn't work out. His wife and 4 children were here in Minnesota, so he ended up coming back here. He had been a trustee for the Carleton College, and he was able to get a job at Carleton as a custodian.
The bank was sold to a rival bank in town, and they came in and they did quite well, and they grew. And by the 1940s, they'd grown so much that they really needed to do some changes to the building to make it work for them. Unfortunately, they didn't have the emotional attachment to the bank. But luckily, through several restorations and changes, a lot of that has been kind of fixed as time's gone by. Through many renovations, the vault's been moved and the teller area has been completely changed. One of those 1950s renovations added the balcony that's over the teller area, and that allows visitors to go up there and really see everything in the building and all those wonderful details.
I love walking into it. I love seeing just it gives you a feeling of peace. I still walk in there and I just feel like, wow, this is beautiful.
Fresh produce on a beautiful spring day. What could be better? There are many farmers markets in our region, showcasing vegetables, flowers, baked goods, and more. We stopped by the Rochester Famers Market to see what was in season.
I guess this is, for us, it's a real important part of farming.
To get the freshest produce, too.
Well, we have a Tuesday market every Tuesday through the end of September. We run from 2 to 6. It's a nice, kind of smaller alternative to our larger Saturday market. On Tuesdays we offer, I guess, what we call a neighborhood scaled farmers market.
You get much fresher things, more of a variety, I think, from the small farmers. Helps the community grow, and why not keep the money, you know, where it belongs, and in the place where everyone's living. We're able to deal directly with our customers, and we know what the customer wants, that we don't have the intermediary telling us do this or do that. We have the customer that we try to respond to.
So today we have about 8 different family farms represented, whereas on Saturday we'll have maybe as many as 60.
2 years ago, my friend asked me if I would come help her at her farm in exchange for all the produce that I want. And I did a good job, so she invited me to also come and help her sell at the farmer's market. This is the 4th Tuesday market that I've done, and we also do the Saturday market. This is the freshest food that people can get. It comes from within probably 25 miles of where they live. It's grown by people that they likely know. So they're supporting families, actual people, not big corporations.
I think it's a lot of, family businesses, bringing, the money full round into the family business, and it's something that my kids and my parents can do together. Everybody can help out.
Besides, obviously, the freshest things you can work with, I love a good deal.
The farmer's market, you want something that's local and doesn't have all the antibiotics and hormones and additives that a lot of your stores carry.
We appreciate all the fresh produce. You're welcome. Come see us again.
Located on the Zumbro River's South Fork, the city of Rochester is Minnesota's 3rd largest city and the largest city located outside the metro area. It's home to Mayo Clinic, one of the largest and most well-known facilities in the country. We did a little exploring in Rochester to find out its history, how it's doing now, and to learn about its future.
Welcome aboard, folks. My name is Nick. I'll be your driver, conductor, narrator, and guide today on the Rochester City and Mayo Historical Trolley Tour. So kick back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
In 1854, a gentleman named George Head came here originally from Rochester, New York, And he brought the name with him because he thought a waterfall in the Summer River reminded him of the river from where he came in Rochester, New York.
Dr. William Worrell Mayo came to Rochester in 1863 as an examining physician for the Union Army. Then, over the years, his two sons joined him in his medical practice, Will Mayo and Dr. Charlie Mayo. Their story really started to heat up in 1883 when a tornado devastated most of North Rochester, and there was a call from the community for more medical services.
The father, with his two sons, asked the Sisters of St. Francis to help take care of the wounded. And coming out of that, the Mother Superior decided or thought Rochester should have a hospital. But the father really didn't think Rochester was big enough for a hospital. Typically because back then when you went to a hospital, it was to die. You were either sick enough when you went in that you died, or you got an infection in the hospital and died from the infection. But rather than just tell her to go away, he said if she could raise $40,000, he and his sons would staff the hospital. And lo and behold, by 1889, actually shortly before that, she raised the $40,000 and they opened St. Mary's Hospital.
Straight ahead is the St. Mary's campus. The building there with the bell tower, that's the Francis building. That stands on the site of the original 1889 building. It replaced it, was the second St. Mary's building in the early 1900s. So fairly soon they had outgrown, the original building.
Rochester's grown in spurts. I mean, it was growing steadily, but not as rapidly as the 1950s when IBM moved here. Eventually, IBM got to be over 7,000 employees. So in the 50s, IBM goosed the population quite a bit. I asked people if they can think of the 4 industries in Rochester, and of course, the one they always miss is agriculture. Agriculture is still huge in Rochester, and it was even bigger in the beginning. Medical is a second one. IBM is probably a third, but that's more generalized technology now. They're getting into medical technology, the clinic is. And then the fourth one is hospitality. We've got something like 6,500 hotel rooms for a city of 100,000. That's a pretty incredible ratio. But that's because 250,000 patients come through Rochester every year.
Kaler Grand Hotel on our right here is on the National Register of Historic Buildings. That went up in the 1920s.
We've had phenomenal growth here. The 2000 census, we were 85,000 something, and the 2010 census, we were 106,769. So 21,000 people in that 10-year period. So that was amazing growth. And obviously most of that is attributed to Mayo Clinic's expansions. And then of course the support services, the restaurants, hotels, everything for that. Now, at least the state demographers say, and through 2014, we're somewhere about 111,000. So the growth continues as it is. And of course, the projections now with the Destination Medical Center is that we could experience in the next 20 years even more phenomenal growth. We could potentially double the size of this city. So it's a challenge, but at the same time, I said, I think there's probably 98% of the cities in America wish they had this kind of a challenge, because it's an opportunity that we're excited about, very excited to be able to do that.
It's estimated that there are over 2.5 million visitors to Rochester each year. And one last interesting statistic is the number of Mayo employees. Here in Rochester, it's well over 32,000 now, just working in Rochester. It's over 60,000 altogether statewide, which makes Mayo the single largest private employer, not just in Rochester, but in the state of Minnesota.
Those initials, DMC, is Destination Medical Center. Mayo Clinic has said in the next 20 years they will probably spend over $3 billion in new developments and projects. They could also generate another $2 billion in other private development. And so there you got already $5.5 billion in new development. The other big district for DMC that's going to get attention right away is it's called Discovery Square, and that's really Mayo. That's going to be probably some of the biotech, biomedicine industries that are, many of them are in Boston and elsewhere, but to have them here. One of the great stories that it happens all the time, I had a reporter who was from the Wall Street Journal that was here a few years ago. She asked about some things and I said, well, you know, here, somebody, if you're in the subway out on the street and you're asking, how do I get to here or where, more than likely, the person isn't just going to point. They may walk with you there. In her article that she wrote later, she said, the mayor told me that, but I had it happen to me personally. She said, I went and somebody said, well, come on, I'll show you where. So she said it validated exactly. He didn't just say it because it was kind of cute to say. We are a very compassionate city. It is a city of hope, health, and hospitality.
That's all for this episode. If you enjoy programs like Off 90, please show your support by becoming a member of KSMQ Public Television. Keep local programming vibrant in southern Minnesota. Give us a call at 507-481-2095 or 1-800-658-2539 or sign up online at ksmq.org. Thanks for watching. Join us next time. Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.